right? So even including what we have right now, right? If nothing changed, if they just woke up in the morning and said, hey, forget everything we said, we're just going to stick with the people that we have in the country, we're not going to do anything to undocumented immigrants. If they said that tomorrow, right, and you didn't have to worry about it anymore, we would still be 500,000 short of the workforce that we need to keep up with the developments that are being in place, the things that they're trying to build, right? So we're already at a disadvantage right out of the gate. Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, we will be discussing the Trump administration's immigration policies and the direct impact that could very well have on the housing market, how it impacts inventory, supply and demand, and the impact that a lot of that can have. As now that they've been sworn in, the Trump administration has really hit the ground running on the effects of illegal immigration and doing everything they can to make sure that they are in their first 100 days getting rid and deporting as many illegal immigrants as possible. It is one of his top priorities, is one of the administration's top priorities, and one of the things that they campaigned on very heavily. So it's something that they've hit the ground running immediately, working to sign legislation as much as they can to try and get these things taking place. And it always begs the question of, okay, what are going to be the impacts of that happening? We always hear, the negative side of illegal immigration when you think of if there are situations where an illegal immigrant commits a crime or causes harm to American citizens. That's always something that is going to be on the forefront of people's minds. But there's also millions upon millions of immigrants who are contributing to our society and very much holding up our economy in some cases. And so we really want to take a second to kind of take a step back and think through all the ways that they impact our society as far as illegal immigration and the way that goes. At this point, for so many years, we have had so many immigrants coming in. It's a melting pot of a country, and we have many people who have come in and contributed to our society. And at this point, we've kind of melded and meshed so much that pulling that apart, almost like ripping off a Band-Aid, it could have some detrimental effects and could cause some wounds that are lingering for years and years to come. And so first I wanted to talk about just the contribution that a lot of those immigrants have when it comes to the housing market. When you're looking at the labor force and the people who are helping to construct houses, right? Helping to renovate properties, helping to bring a lot of revenue in generating income for a lot of these builders and developers and real estate people alike. You have to understand that they make up a huge part of that workforce. I was reading an article with Inman News, and they were saying that undocumented as well as documented legal immigrants total, they make up about a quarter of the construction labor workforce, right? So that's a fourth of the workforce that is immigrants coming in. Now, how many of those are undocumented versus documented? Those numbers are a bit murky, but you have to understand that just because one person may be legally in the country, they may have a family member or someone who isn't. And the Trump administration has been very clear that they're trying to remove any and everyone, even if you are associated or living with someone who is legally here. They want to remove anybody in any shape or form that is illegally in the country. And so there could be a lot of collateral damage in the fact that there may be households where there are several that are legal and there might be one that isn't, and they may have to uproot and leave because of the one who isn't. It could cause detrimental effects, whatever, across the board. And so we really have to understand how that can play into it as well. But as it currently stands, like I said, about a quarter of the workforce in the construction industry is immigrants. Right. So they are a huge part of the construction of houses, a huge part of helping with one of our biggest problems right now, which is housing inventory. We are short housing inventory in this market. We can't build the houses fast enough. The land isn't cheap enough. It isn't affordable enough for them to be able to build houses that are a feasible option as it stands right now. And so because the interest rates are so high right now as comparison to what it was a few years ago, many sellers are saying, hey, if I move out of this house, I'm essentially going to be moving to something that is lesser or smaller or not as nice quite as what I currently have now. And I may even end up paying a little bit more for that house, right? And so a lot of sellers are just staying put because they don't have the resources or the funds, or they don't have the desire, technically, right, to make that move to go to the other place or go to another spot. And so they're waiting for either resale inventory to hit the market or for new homes to be built that are more in line with what they're looking for. There's a lot of first-time home buyers that are waiting in the wings as well, waiting for other options to come available that they can purchase. And if we can't get those houses built fast enough, it is going to make prices continue to stay at a rising rate and make houses less and less affordable for first-time home buyers. But then also you're going to have a lot of people who are just staying put with where they are, people who are currently homeowners in the market right now. And so a lot of the inventory that needs to be built is going to be put at a standstill. It's going to come to a stall if we just have a sweeping escape of the workers in the industry that we need right now. They were estimating, the National Immigration Forum was estimating that the construction industry is already about 500 about 500,000 short of what they need in the workforce, right? And that's counting the documented and undocumented immigrants, right? So even including what we have right now, right? If nothing changed, if they just woke up in the morning and said, hey, forget everything we said, we're just going to stick with the people that we have in the country, we're not going to do anything to undocumented immigrants. If they said that tomorrow, right, and you didn't have to worry about it anymore, we would still be 500,000 short of the workforce that we need to keep up with the developments that are being in place, the things that they're trying to build, right? So we're already at a disadvantage right out of the gate. And so if you start to eliminate even more of that workforce without having a plan for bringing in more people, it's going to be a really difficult time. Now, they said that that's one of the key industries that can't survive just on U.S. natural-born citizens. It just isn't enough people going around. Now, you may say, well, once they leave, then other people may feel welcome to come in. These jobs have not pushed away U.S. citizens, right? There's never been situations where they said, hey, we're not hiring U.S. citizens to fill these jobs. It's just one of those things that U.S. citizens have not done, right? We've talked about it in depth about other trades, right? When you think of plumbers, appraisers, and a lot of those things, we're seeing less and less people getting into those fields, and there's going to be a wave of unskilled laborers, right? There's going to be a wave of people who are not filling those jobs. And when the current people retire, then we're going to have even more of a shortage issue, right? Like I said, the immigrants make up about a quarter of the workforce, but when you start to break it down by the actual subsections, right, when you think of painters, roofers, they make up even more in those certain sections, right? They make up like 40% of roofing, right? You might have someone who comes to give a quote and everything on your roof, but the people who are actually doing the work, a lot of those workforce may be immigrants. Same thing with painters and many of the other jobs out there as well. And so it's going to be a serious problem that is on the horizon if they're able to follow through with all of the immigration policies that they put in place. Because, again, you need someone to come in to be able to fill that void. And if no one comes in to fill that void, that means one thing and one thing only. The price is going up, right? The people who are remaining in the industry, they're going to be pulled in a million different directions, and the only way that they're going to be able to relieve that pressure is by raising their prices, right? And so a lot of the projects and things that are currently in place to help relieve the pressure on the housing shortage, those things are going to be put on hold. They're going to be put off to the side because people are now trying to figure out how in the world we're going to find the workforce. These are things that we experienced, one, when the Great Recession happened in '08, right? You had a lot of the subcontractors who left the business because construction was at a standstill. Houses weren't being built. The market was just in terrible shape. And so a lot of them left and went to other industries and other places. And then as the market started to pick back up a few years later, and they started to call those subcontractors back into the business, they had already moved on. They weren't coming back, right? And so it was a difficult time to try to figure out how do we do that. Same thing with the pandemic, right? When we had a lot of laborers that were lost during the pandemic, a lot of people who left the business or weren't in those areas, and that again exacerbated the housing inventory issues that we currently have. And so those are things that we really need to keep in mind. Another thing that has been brought up, or another point that has been made, is that oftentimes people will reference the fact that housing is high because the undocumented or illegal immigrants are purchasing the houses that first-time homebuyers would be able to purchase. And when they looked at the studies, it's less than maybe 5% of people that live, or undocumented immigrants that live in the housing force, and many of them live in low-income housing that wouldn't even be something that the average person would be considering when they're looking to purchase their home, right? And so the pressure on affordable single-family housing is not necessarily coming from undocumented immigrants. That's coming from other buyers in the market who are competing for those houses as well. It's a ton, as we have talked about ad nauseum in a lot of my past podcasts. There is a lot that you have to go through when you are applying for a mortgage, right? There's so many things that you need to keep in line. There's so many documents, so many things that you need to have in place and in line to be able to qualify for that mortgage. And so the thought that you weren't able to get that house, or you lost all in that house because an undocumented immigrant came in and made that money more affordable, or made that house less affordable for you, or was competing for that house, that is highly unlikely. I haven't personally run into it in my time in the business. Now, there may be other states who may be dealing with such a situation like that, but that has not been my personal experience. And I don't think that that is going to have the impact that has been promised, in the sense that, hey, if we can just get rid of these illegal immigrants and just do it straight across the board, we're going to be good in terms of housing. Another thing to keep in mind is there's also the mention of tariffs that have been mentioned coming in place, right? There's a lot of talk of putting tariffs back in place in the economy, and economists have warned as well that that could also have a major impact on building supplies, right? Because if we increase taxes on those imports, they're just going to raise the price. If we don't already have something in place to make sure that we can fill the void that's going to be left by implementing those tariffs, then they're going to have no choice but to, again, like I said, raise the price, and all of those building materials are going to be more expensive. Now, I'm not saying that I'm against trying to make sure that we are more self-sufficient and not as dependent on other countries for a lot of our imports and stuff. I think that that's a great goal to try to really boost U.S. manufacturing. But the main point is that if we just try to implement this too quickly, it almost ends up being a house of cards, right? Where you have a lot of effects and consequences that come in place because we don't immediately have the resources and the manpower to fill that void immediately, which means that the prices are going to go up. And so you've got that issue playing on one hand, where you've got the building materials and the things that are needed to physically build these houses. You got that going up. And then also on top of that, you also have, on the flip side of it, a shortage of actual laborers who can do the work, right? So those two things mixed together can be a real recipe for disaster when it comes to the housing shortage that we are currently experiencing in America. Now, again, I'm not saying that we should just be a free-for-all and we should not even bother trying to naturalize citizens and make sure that they can get into the country and everything. But I'm saying that if we just come through and quickly try to, in one fell swoop, get rid of as many undocumented immigrants as possible, the consequences are going to be far greater on the U.S. citizens who are currently here than we even expect or anticipate, right? And so that's one thing that we really need to keep in mind, is that if we want to do this, there needs to be a plan in place for how we're going to handle the problems that are obviously down the horizon, right? We see the problems. We see the shortage in labor. We see the shortage in housing development. We see the possibility of what happens when the price of materials goes up dramatically. We saw that in 2021 when the pricing went up on so many things. And so we know the impact that this can have, and it's definitely something that we need to be very thorough and very detailed. It cannot be something where we're just sweeping in and just making those changes without any forethought into what can really change and impact, and is that actually going to help the American citizens when it comes to housing. And so I definitely think that these are all things we need to keep in mind. One last point I'll make as well is that we've noticed too, because there have been so many affordability issues and interest rates have jumped up so much higher in the past few years, there's been a lot of homeowners who have instead of trying to purchase that new house or something, they've said, hey, instead of doing that, we will instead make changes to our current home. Right, we will add an extra bedroom. We'll update the kitchen. We'll do all these different changes to try and turn this house into the one that we would have moved into, which is great. But you have to understand, again, the undocumented immigrants make up a huge part of the construction workforce, and so if that again is an issue that comes down the pipe because we have just eliminated or removed or deported all of these immigrants, that can have a very negative impact on also the housing upgrades and repairs that go into place as well. And so now not only will you have sellers who are essentially stuck in their house because they don't want to move to something lesser, but now they won't even be able to go through the process of upgrading or renovating their current home because, again, if the tariffs go in place immediately, at least in the short term, prices are going to go up quickly. And so it's going to, that kitchen renovation is going to cost likely twice as much as what it did before. And also, if the laborers are short, then that project is going to take significantly longer, right? Because the contractors that are still left here, they're going to be getting pulled onto other projects, bigger projects, right? They're going to be getting paid more money to kind of help come in. And so, again, if there's nothing being put in place to help alleviate the pressure that is currently there, we're really lining ourselves up for a disaster down the line and some real serious problems with housing affordability, even more serious than what we're currently experiencing, if you can imagine that, right? We already are in a tight spot as it is. It can get much worse, trust me. And so I really think that we need to make sure that we're making our voices heard, talking to our local representatives, doing everything that we can to make sure that they understand that this is a problem that does need addressing, but we need to make sure that we understand the consequences and the effects of our decisions. So I hope that that's a little helpful for you guys. I just wanted to touch on it briefly because I had heard so much about it in the news, but I think it's a really important topic for us to keep our eye on. And I'm sure this won't be the last episode that I do on this topic. It's going to be something that we're going to be watching for the next several years to come. And so hope that that's helpful for you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll talk to you all next week.